The strongest start to a season in Quakes history has been extended by an additional win, this time on the road against Sporting Kansas City and giving the Quakes their third consecutive win. My name is Kevin, I'm joined by Luis, and together we're the Quakesaholics. Let's talk about this match. Luis, initial impressions on this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost getting, I don't want to say repetitive, but every game we cover damn near is a win. And yeah, it's been fantastic again tonight against Kansas. Second time we've played them this season, but again, another 3 points tally up for the Quakes. And I would say top of the West.
Yeah, at this point, top of the West, tied with Vancouver. I mean, I said this last week. I wake up, I eat breakfast, I eat lunch, Quakes get a win. And that routine has continued in this match. I was actually thinking about this between the San Diego game and this game, that not that I wanted the Quakes to go down early, but I was hoping that, maybe not hoping is the word, but I wanted to know if the Quakes can pull off a comeback win. Because we've seen in this season, either they get the clean sheet in the win, or they don't get either one. And especially when we look at the road ahead, and I guess playing on the road in LAFC, that is a game that I'm expecting will be a lot of goals. And if the Quakes want to get a result in that one, it's a good thing that we've already proven that we can come back from a negative result and get a positive one. Okay, so let's talk about this match itself. Starting 11, pretty similar to last week. Really, the only change is that Romney steps in at left back. And we did see again, Timo Werner is injured, Skahan getting that start for the second consecutive week. I have thoughts about this whole left back situation, but Luis, what are you thinking about this starting 11? How are you feeling about these games?
I mean, like I just said, it's another 3 points. It's another good result. So in terms of the lineup, even though really when I see this lineup, like last season, it would not fill me with any confidence. It just seems like whoever Bruce Arena puts on the field, he can get a result. And yeah, in terms of Timo Werner being gone again, I do think that's a pretty big, I don't want to say big concern, but it's a concern for sure. And it's something that we also highlighted when we first signed Timo Werner. That yeah, when he gets on the field, he's going to be good. He's produced. He already has 2 assists in 2 different games, but it's I think the third game running that we haven't been able to see Timo Werner start. That in the last time he got minutes was just a short cameo. I think it was against
Vancouver?
yeah, exactly, Vancouver. So it's a bit of a concern. Not quite sure what the injury is, where it came from, and what the timeline is. But despite that, this team has been able to turn out results consistently.
Yeah, and coming back to the Vancouver game, I remember in that press conference, Bruce Arena did mention that Timo Werner played in that match with a slight lower back injury. So at this point, we don't know if that's just a continuation of that same injury. I don't know how it would have gotten worse from that match. I think he only played like 30 minutes maybe. But yeah, I agree with the concern. It feels like at this point, he's missed more games than he's actually played. It isn't exactly at that number yet, but I mean, we're basically 1 week away from that. And then with the left back situation, again, this is another case of injuries. You look at this roster, and we have at least 3 players that you can point out saying these players can play as a left back. If you include Paul Marie, that's 4 players that are eligible for left back positions.
Left back experience.
Exactly, left back experience. But we see Dave Romney get his first start of the season and play in that left back position. And I will say, this is nothing against Dave Romney. I think he did a fantastic job in this game. Of course, the goal is just the cherry on top. But it is concerning that, the position on the field that is on paper the most covered is the first position, maybe second position that can't be filled because of injuries. And we've talked about this, that one of the biggest concerns for the Quakes isn't their starting 11. It isn't if they can go up against big teams. We saw them get results against Vancouver, San Diego, get results on the road. The biggest question for this team right now is how we're going to deal with the lack of depth. What's going to happen if another injury happens? What's going to happen when we get that first red card? Because, the MLS season, it's a long one. We've only gone 7 games in. There's still 26, 27 matches left. It's going to be a long season. And when the starting 11 is this thin, when it comes to having, valid at the caliber replacements, that's a concern.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the bench today, you can see a lot of players who you're more familiar with seeing or associating with our second team. Adam Abua on the bench, Nick Fernandez, who ended up getting minutes, Jack Jasinski, who of course had his MLS debut today.
Correct.
So congratulations to him. But yeah, a lot of inexperience, I would say. I do get a little bit of comfort just from Bruce Arena's ability with this team to be able to introduce talent that we haven't been familiar with. Reed Roberts, of course, last year. Floriani's on the bench. Someone who looked pretty dependable last season for the minutes and the experience that he had. Someone that we'll probably see again for this season. But Yeah, absolutely. And especially like kind of like a when it rains, it pours sort of situation, specifically at that left back position of it's pretty unlucky to have three players in one position. In a position where like at the beginning of the season we had a lot. I mean, we started with two left backs on the field at
Yeah.
once, right? So but yeah, it's a concern, and injuries like that can happen at any time. The Dwan Jones season-ending injury, unfortunately, but came out of nowhere. So yeah, depth will be a big question mark for the remaining season.
And to wrap up on that point of roster construction, I think there's been a lot of earned merit for Bruce Arena and how he's managed this squad and gotten these results. And that is, of course, a huge positive for Bruce. But I think it is worth mentioning here that Bruce Arena is also the sporting director. So he also, in a way, has a seat. He's on the other side of that, more of that front office kind of distinction. And I think there's almost like an equivalent amount of praise to be given to Bruce Arena for how he's handled this coaching situation. There has to be an equivalent amount of critique and criticism of the front office in not getting more players. We don't know how much of that is on Bruce Arena. We don't know how much of that is on ownership. We just don't have that kind of transparency. But I want to be able to, be on record saying that depth is a concern. And I hope this doesn't come back to haunt us, but I don't want to sound, if that does come to play, I don't want to just be like reactive in the moment. This is a valid concern that I think a lot of people have had since the beginning of the season.
And it's something that we outlined before the season even began, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, very fair.
Anyways, back to this match. Let's talk about Kansas City. What did you think of them? I remember when the match first started, I was actually surprised that you said that you thought that this was going to be a difficult match for the Quakes. I came into this game thinking that this was going to be some of the easiest points we've picked up this season. Why did you think Kansas City was going to be an actual threat?
Well, I rewatched the 3-0 game that we had, our season opener, which results wise was a pretty, it looks like a straightforward result. But despite that, I do think that they had some really good combination plays in that game. And I had some concerns about how that would play out, like actually in their stadium when they had the home field advantage previously. Not so much this season, thankfully, but last season for sure. There were a lot of concerns about sometimes the Quakes would get sort of picked apart. Quick combinations you've had when you have midfield runners, the Quakes want to play aggressively. That players can get pulled in all over the place. If the opposition team wants to, make runs vertically, diagonally, in whatever direction. And I was kind of concerned by that. We did see a little bit of that today. The first 10 minutes or so were a little bit concerning. I felt a bit angsty is the word I would use for this game. And yeah, that leads to the first goal with Bartlett, who is a midfielder. Starts off with a long diagonal pass down to his right winger. Bo seems to have a misplaced pass to Buddha and leads to a goal by him. So just things like that, just the way that Kansas, their movement off the ball, I didn't think it'd be a clear-cut, easy 3 points. Not to say that I thought we were going to lose necessarily, but I didn't think that the points gap would be reflected on the field.
Yeah, when I think about Kansas City, I just think about them being not like a one-trick pony, but Jovic seems like a really big part of that attack. And in this game and in the first game that we played against them, Daniel Mooney has shown that he can go man-to-man with some of the best players in this league. And so I think that was a really big strong point in this game, again, in shutting down that threat. The critique I have about the Quakes, and you kind of alluded to this, is the midfield didn't feel cohesive and consistent like it did in previous matches. I think it's really easy to look at this match and see Niko Tsakiris and just what a phenomenal performance he put in tonight. But I do think that when it comes to Bolaroo and even Ronaldo Vieira, some moments in this game were lacking. Particularly in the first half, I was not impressed by Bolaroo. This is probably the first time that I've ever said that I've been unimpressed with his performance. And I'm not just talking about the missed opportunity he had in front of goal. Those plays are very quick. I understand that you can't put away all of those shots. And of course, he's not a 9. He's not a striker, so I don't fault him for that. I guess he can only score goals that are from like 30 yards out. I wish we all had that problem. My critique with Bolaroo in this game is that some of the passing felt very poor. Maybe that's a little bit too critical, but like you said, in that first goal, that pass that gets misplaced is from Bolaroo. Some of those deep passes, I felt like were just giving away the ball freely. Not what I'm accustomed to seeing from Bolaroo. And then when it comes to Ronaldo Vieira, I think the second half was stronger for him for sure, but the tackles didn't feel as clean and consistent as usual. Ronald Vieira is a player that when he puts in his leg, it's like 98% of the time he's coming out with the ball. I didn't get that sense in this match.
Yeah, and I also think, like I said, that's kind of, I do think part of that perception might also come from the way that Kansas plays, specifically their ability to control the ball, their combinations. I feel like with Kansas, as opposed to other teams, when we would lose it, we weren't able to regain it back as quickly as we might see in other games. It felt like the intensity from the San Jose Earthquakes wasn't there. It wasn't as obvious, I guess you could say, in terms of like the pressing and turnovers deep into Kansas territory. But at the same time, I do think that it goes both ways. And there were also, I feel like, a lot more combinations from the Quakes side. One thing I noticed is that we had like 450 passes, which was a bit of a surprise to me. But yeah, I think with Kansas, specifically when you lose a ball, when you misplace a pass, like LaRue did, like, with Bruce Arena and the way our midfielders typically want to look long, when those gets misplaced, it might be 5 to 10 Kansas passes before we see that ball back.
And yeah, in a game like this, where I mentioned Joveljic being like the main threat, giving up passes in the midfield isn't going to be as punishing because Muni, again, is just very good man-to-man, and his overall defense has been a strong suit for us. But one thing is that we haven't really played against teams that have multiple lethal threats up top. Most of these matches have been maybe one really strong one and then another one that's pretty good. Our next game is going to be against a team that has an actual lethal front three, all three players being high caliber players. And so what I'm looking at is the Quakes cannot be making these kind of misplaced passes in the midfield. They cannot be affording to give up transitional moments, to give up counterattacks in particular. And if we want to find success against a big team like LAFC, which we're playing next week, that has to be cleaned up.
Definitely. I mean, you just have to go back to Seattle Sounders to kind of see what can happen when you play against a team that's good on transition. I think they had one shot on target maybe, and that's all they needed to get 3 points in PayPal Park. So big concern. I feel like that game is probably going to be a lot more toe-to-toe, a lot more intensity, and probably a bit more back and forth. But at the same time, like you say, I think that if Quakes want to approach this game, that's mainly just because of the way Quakes approach every game. But in terms of LAFC specifically, I would think they're going to have to dig in and probably suffer off the ball quite a bit. And there's just no way around that when you have the talents of that LAFC get to have at their disposal.
Yeah. In Muni, we trust. We'll see how that goes. Okay. I feel like we've been far too negative for a result that has been so positive. So 3 points, 3 goals. Let's get into them. We mentioned that Niko was the star in this midfield, and I would argue that he was a star in this game. Let's talk about these goals. What do you think?
First and foremost, a lot of credit has to go to Bruce Arena. I think both of us have been critical of Bruce Arena and his in-game management at times, whether it be substitutions, specifically last season. But this game, Jack Skahan and Sonny Buddha weren't too effective in those first 30 minutes, I would say. But after, around the 30th, 40th minute mark, they get switched around. Sonny Buddha goes on the right, where we've seen him this season. Jack Skahan goes on the left. And it wasn't too long after that where we see the first goal with a absolutely magnificent run and pass with his weaker foot from Niko Tsakiris and to Jack Skahan, who I think missed a sitter or two maybe not too long ago, but seems to always get a few important goals every season. I feel like he always gets like 1 or 2. So I think that the switch of the wingers and for Jack Skahan to be in the right place, right time, and Niko to have that time to make it real as easy as it could be for Jack Skahan was a fantastic way to respond to Kansas City school. And as much as maybe Bolaroo did misplace a few passes, I do think that the second goal was an instance where the pass into Judd initially does come from Bolaroo. It's a long pass to Judd, lays it off to Niko Tsakiris, I believe, and then Niko Tsakiris puts a perfectly weighted pass into Judd, who first touch crosses it in between the legs of the onrushing Kansas or retreating Kansas center back for another pretty well set up shot for Jack Skahan. It's kind of a cliche, but I do think that it is definitely a thing where sometimes if you have too much time to think about it, you can mess up a shot. You may want to place it too perfectly, but I think Jack Skahan looked composed, placed it well, took his chance well. The first goal probably helped his confidence too. So, and one thing where personally I have to acknowledge is I haven't been very convinced with Preston Judd last season. This season, I had a concern, going from Chicho Arango to and Joseph Martinez as well to Preston Judd, who, I mean, I love his gritty moments. The Vancouver goal, he had his moments, but I just wasn't sure about him being the out and out starting center forward. But I've been impressed. His ability to get into wide areas, he can hold up the ball well. He connects well with Niko Tsakiris. He doesn't mind going out wide and putting a cross in for a Sonny Buddha, or in this case, Jack Skahan. So fantastic from Preston Judd again, and Niko Tsakiris as well. I mean, I feel like he is just on a different level of confidence. I think these are the sort of performances we've been accustomed to seeing for the United States U20, but to do this in MLS for a team that is at the top of the West is absolutely fantastic. And as much as we probably expected Niko Tsakiris to carry more responsibility this season as opposed to last season, I don't think any of us could have expected it to go as well as it has. Early on in that game as well, great delivery, whether it be a cross, off a corner, or in this case of the second goal, a perfectly weighted through ball. Fantastic. Dribbling as well, 1v1s. His decision making is borderline flawless, I would say, most of the time, and especially with the confidence he's been given under Bruce Arena.
I'll come back to Niko. Just want to call out for Judd in particular. Judd is leading the team with goals and assists. He's currently at 5. I don't think many people would have disagreed with your takes about Preston Judd at the end of last season. This was a player that everyone knew that this was like the captain of Grit FC,
right?
The spirit of Goonies, and everyone loved seeing him come off the bench.
Exactly.
Even last season when he had a phenomenal, like probably his career high in terms of goals, great season for him. I don't think anyone thought that he was starting caliber at that time. Maybe he did, but in terms of fans, I don't know. But then when we came to the end of the season, I think it was during the roster updates video that we had, we actually did compare goals per 90 minutes played. And Preston Judd actually had a higher value than Chicho. He had 0.52 goals per 90 compared to Chicho's 0.46, which in practice, that roughly equates to a goal every 2 games for both of them. But it was just slightly higher. It was lower than Joseph Martinez at 0.67. And I will also, call out that Chicho for stretches of the season was played out of position. But still, when you're, comparing Preston Judd to Chicho Arango, who was a household name in MLS, a designated player making, I think he was at like $2.2 or $2.3 million, to be able to outperform him in a key metric like that is just kind of, I guess hindsight is 2020, but he always had this in him, it seems. And now coming back to Niko, one thing that we talked about last week is that we got a big result against San Diego without any designated players on the field. Designated player being those players that make multiple millions of dollars. They are big name players. Last year was Christian Espinosa, Chicho Arango, Hernan Lopez while he was still here. In this season, we only have one. That is Timo Werner, and he did not play for the last game or this game. I think it is even more impressive that a team that has 0 designated players on field can play and get these kind of results, and that Niko Tsakiris is playing as if he was a designated player
Absolutely.
For this team. He is at that level.
And yeah, in terms of the third goal as well, coming back to the change that Bruce Arena made, I'm pretty sure Sonny Buddha was involved. I think he laid it off to Benji Kinovich, who made the underlapping run, who sent the cross in. Kind of scuffed assist by Daniel Muni into Dave Romney with another. I'll give him credit. I don't think it was necessarily a scuffed finish, but not a player that you expect in that situation in the area like that. Probably a positive for him being the left back. Can box crash a bit more, but really important goal as well from Dave Romney to score in the 75th minute to give a little bit of breathing room for the Quakes away, especially.
And yeah, with that third goal, that was basically just sentencing Kansas City to a loss at that point. It gives, like you said, breathing room for the Quakes. We see some substitutions, Jack Jasinski getting his debut at right back, just committing to defense, a few opportunities, not fully, parking the bus. But yeah, pretty smooth sailing to see out the rest of this game. And I just want to stress the importance of getting points now, too. We have not seen a start like this from the Quakes. No one has seen a start like this for the Quakes in their whole 52 years of history. Like we mentioned, MLS season is going to be a long one. And if you compare how many points the Quakes already have compared to last season, we are many matches ahead of our pace from last season. And it is very important to keep up this pace, because if you don't have depth, you need to be getting those points when you have everyone available. We cannot be, dropping points just because we're on the road. We saw this last season too, that in my opinion, the reason that the Quakes didn't make it to the playoffs wasn't because we couldn't get results against teams that were, like LAFC, that were at the top of the table. The reason the Quakes didn't make playoffs last year was because we would give up easy points to teams that had no shot of making it into the playoffs. And it's still very early in the season. Everything happened. We saw, I think, what was it, 2-3 years ago, that Kansas City, their first 10 games, they had like one win or something like that. And then they just won out the rest of the season, at least like second half of the season, and made playoffs. So I'm not necessarily discounting them at this moment, but you look at the Western Conference standings, Kansas City being all the way at the bottom right now, it is so important that we got our full 6 points from them. Teams that are below us in the standings at the end of the season, those are games, and those are maybe duels, home and away, that the Quakes need to be sweeping. We need to get full points from that, and they did it in this game. So props to them.
Yeah, and also I think not only getting results from the fixtures that seem accessible, but also getting results when the performances are there as well. I mean, how many times as a Quakes fan in the last couple of seasons have we heard, whether it be from Luchi Gonzalez or maybe Bruce Arena, well, at times, playing well, but like the XG was there, or playing well, deserving more. And it's really important when you're trying to secure those playoff positions to not allow 3 points to turn into 1 point, or 1 point to turn into 0 points, or whatever it may be. So I think that's another really good sign, to have actually playing well and to get the points to back it up as well. Also, just generally another takeaway I had from this Kansas City game, and kind of reflecting back on the season as well, is one thing that I really feel about the team this season is just the balance overall. It's like, I think you've summed it up really well about addition by subtraction. And it feels like everyone is on the same page a lot of the time. Everyone defends, and everyone kind of knows their responsibility. Everyone executes their own individual responsibilities well, and that you see that in the team performances. And the same thing offensively as well. When Kansas maybe gave the Quakes a little bit more space to actually show, to actually pass the ball around and play, I felt like the Quakes played well. They were connecting passes. They were able to get crosses in from. We've seen goals from the left side, from the right side. We've seen, we've also seen moments of just sheer brilliance from Niko Tsakiris, from Bolaru at times. And it's just really good to see that everyone is playing their part, and everyone seems to be elevating each other from that. In terms of, like, I guess if you look at like transfer market value, compare that to what we're seeing in terms of the team performance, it's just like it's just such a overperformance, I guess, in terms of those monetary evaluations, at least at the beginning of the season, and I think that that's just such a good thing to see, and a lot of credit as well has to go to the players in Bruce Arena as well.
Yeah, as much as I want to take credit for the addition by subtraction, I got that from Bruce Arena himself. But yes, again, props to Bruce Arena for the term and for actually going through and proving that it wasn't just fluff and just made up words.
Right.
Looking ahead, like we mentioned, in league play, Quakes do play against LAFC next weekend. That, I think, will be that'll be a game where I will definitely not have my voice, probably 45 minutes into the game. But more importantly than that is a game that the Quakes will really cement themselves in terms of, okay, can they go up against the best of the best with the roster limitations that we have? And of course, before the LAFC game, the Quakes do have a midweek game in the Open Cup against Phoenix Rising. I'm kind of glad that some of these players that played in this match, Jack Jasinski, Nick Fernandez, got minutes here. I'm expecting that it'll be a heavily rotated squad, so getting minutes now is good. Hopefully we get through that, and then LAFC over the weekend. But so far, so good. Quakes feel like they're in flow state. Couldn't be prouder of this team or happier with this team. So go Quakes. If you made it this far in the video, thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you.